Hey everybody, today we're going to take a look at writing equations that involve consecutive integers. So stay tuned to find out what that's all about. So what does the word consecutive mean? Consecutive means that something is following continuously or it's in sequence. So as an example, some consecutive numbers would be like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, right? Those all go in order. Another example of consecutive numbers would be 41, 42, 43, okay? You could even have some consecutive numbers that are negative. That could be like -6, -5, -4. And sometimes you'll even see something like consecutive odd numbers. So those would be odd numbers in a row. That would be something like 5, 7, and 9. Or also you could have consecutive even numbers. And so those would be even numbers in a row, like 8, 10, 12, 14, and so on. They just have to make sure that those numbers are going in order and they're going from smallest to greatest, especially with those negatives, smallest to greatest. I wouldn't say 9, 8, 7 as consecutive numbers. I would say 7, 8, 9. All right, let's take a look at what this looks like in an equation word problem. So this problem says the sum of 3 consecutive integers is 66. We're asked to write an algebraic equation to model the problem. We're going to solve that equation and check our work. Okay, so let's reread this now and kind of break it down piece by piece. Make sure we understand what it's telling us. So the first thing is it says the sum of 3 consecutive integers. We know that sum means addition, right? So we're going to be adding together 3 numbers that are in a row, and we're going to get an answer of 66. And we need to make sure we're doing that as an algebraic equation, meaning we're going to have some variables in it, or have a variable in it, okay? So if I'm thinking of this as, okay, we don't really know what our first number is, do we? And in math, when we don't know something, we can use a variable. So we're going to say, okay, if our first number is, let's say, n for number, okay, then our second number would have to be one more than that, right? Because consecutive means they have to come in order. So if the first number is 10, the next one would be 10 plus 1 or 11. If the first number is 40, then the second number would be 40 plus 1 or 41. So the way this looks here is we say our second number is n plus 1. And then our third number would be 2 more than this original one is, right? So it would be n plus 2. Okay, so we've got our first number, our second number, and our third number. And now we need to write an equation that says if I add those 3 together, I get a total of 66. Okay, so here's what that looks like. I'm going to take my first number plus my second number, which is n plus 1, plus my third number, n plus 2, and I have a total of 66. This now is the equation that we can solve. Okay, you guys know how to do this. You've been doing an awesome job of it. Let's start by combining our like terms to solve this equation. So we've got n plus n plus n. That is 3n. And then we have plus 1 and plus 2. So that makes plus 3. And all of that is equal to 66. Then we go ahead and subtract 3 from each side, and we're left with 3 times n equals 63. And we, final step, divide by 3 to get an answer of n equals 21. All right, so we're not quite done yet. We know what n is, but it's asking us for the 3 consecutive numbers. Well, let's go back up here and see. Oh yeah, we said that our first number is n. Okay, so our first number is 21. Then that means that our second number is 1 more than that, or 21 plus 1, which is 22. And then our third number would be 21 plus 2, which is 23. And these are going to be our 3 consecutive numbers that have a sum of 66. If I add those all up, I get 66. All right, this problem tells us that the sum of 3 consecutive integers is negative 21. So If we use n to represent our first integer, then we'll be adding to that our second integer, which is n plus 1, right? One more than that. And then we'd be adding to that our third integer, which is n plus 2, which is 2 more than our first one was. And all of that together has to equal, this time it's going to be a negative number. We get negative 21. Don't let the negatives scare you though, the process is still the same. So we take our equation and we start by combining our like terms. I have n plus n plus n. That's going to give me 3n. And then I have 1 plus 2, which gives me 3. And all of that is equal to negative 21. Then I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides of my equation to help isolate that variable. And I have 3n equals, now be careful over here, we have negative 21 minus 3. We get negative 24. Woo. All right, then we divide by 3 to find out that n is equal to negative 8. Okay, so our first number then would be negative 8. Our second number would be n plus 1, or negative 8 plus 1. That's going to be negative 7. And then our third number is n plus 2, or negative 8 plus 2, and that's going to give me negative 6. Now let's look at this and see if this makes sense for a second. Are these three numbers consecutive? Do they go in order? Do they go from smallest to biggest? Well, yeah, they do. They're negative. So as we go to the right here, we're actually getting closer to 0. Negative 8, negative 7, and negative 6 are three consecutive integers. All right, so here's one that says the sum of three consecutive odd integers is 45. And again, we're going to write an equation, solve, and check it to see what those three consecutive odd integers are. So we're going to start this just like the other ones, right? We're still going to be adding our first number plus our second number plus our third number to get 45, okay? But this time we're going to say, okay, our first number, we're going to call that n, plus, now our second number, if we're going to an odd number, we're doing consecutive odd numbers, we have to like jump ahead one, right? Because consecutive numbers that are odd would be like 7, 9, 11, or 15, 17, 19. They've got to go in order, but you're skipping ahead 2 every time. So if our first number is n, our second number is n plus 2, and then our third number is n plus 4. Okay, again, I'm just going to show this underneath. Let's just say our first number was 3, then our second number would be 3 plus 2, or 5, and then our third number would be 7, which would be like 3 plus 4. So it's a little confusing maybe at first, but the more of these you do, the more sense it will make. Okay, so we've got our first number, our second number, and our third number, and together those have a total of 45. And now we just solve that equation by combining like terms. I have 3n plus 6 this time equals 45. Subtract 6 from both sides, and I have 3n equals 39. And when I divide both sides by 3, I get an answer of n equals 13. So that tells me that my first number is 13. And if we are doing three consecutive odd numbers, then our next odd number in order would be 15. And the one after that would be 17. So let's see, if we add 13, 15, and 17 together, do we get 45? Well, I get an answer of 5, 4, and yes, we do. Our answer checks here. So those are our three consecutive odd integers with a sum of 45. All right, you know what time it is. I won't let you guys leave without being able to practice a few yourself. So it's your turn to try the first one, which tells us the sum of three consecutive even integers is 246. So pause the video, give this a try, and come back to see how you did. All right, are you ready? Let's see how we did. Is this the equation you got? N plus 2 plus n plus 4 equals 246. If not, pause, Try again. If you did, keep going. When I solve this one, I got n equals 80, which means my first number is 80. My second number is 80 plus 2, or 82. And my third number was 80 plus 4, which is 84. These are my 3 consecutive even numbers that have a sum of 246. So that brings us to the end of today's video. And if you have any questions, make sure you pop on our Google Meets and check in for some help. All right, thanks for watching.